This trip changed the entire trajectory of my life. Cue intro. What's up, y'all? My name's Jess. I'm an EF Ultimate Break brand ambassador, and today I'm reviewing their Ultimate Europe trip. If you're unfamiliar, EF Ultimate Break is a group travel company that specializes in travel for people ages 18 all the way to 35, and they do all the heavy lifting for you. So every trip price includes things like flights, if you opt in, hotels, transportation to and from cities, tickets to iconic attractions, metro passes, breakfast every day, a full-time tour director, and so much more. I personally have been to 16 countries with the company thus far, which is absolutely mind-blowing, and my journey all started with Ultimate Europe. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty, I am an EF Ultimate Break ambassador, so if you want to save $100 off of your first EF Ultimate Break trip, be sure to book through the link in the description. It'll give you an additional $100 off on top of sale prices. Now that I've got that out of the way, let's get into the details. Ultimate Europe is the second largest trip that Ultimate Break offers. It covers 9 countries and 14 cities over the course of 35 days. The activity level for this trip is moderate, so you don't need to train, but you will need to put your walking shoes on because you'll be getting those steps in every single day. Now, keep in mind, I went on this trip in 2019, so while a lot of the things are still the same, there are a few differences. One of which being that there are now 2 different options for this trip, both Essential and Plus. I personally went on the Essential trip, and that meant that we had quite a few people to a room. It was a mix of both hotels and hostels, but overall, it was a really great experience and an amazing way to make new friends. The second option is now a Plus upgrade. So essentially what Plus means is that the accommodations are a little bit more upscale. It's 2 people to a room, and there are some additional dinners included. Instead of a day-to-day recap, because that would take an astronomical amount of time for 35 days, I'm going to do country recaps. So we're going to go country by country that we visited on tour. I'm going to share the accommodations that we used and some of my favorite free time activities. First up is Barcelona, Spain. Being that I was on the Essential trip, we stayed in the Student Hotel Marina. It was kind of like a little college dorm, but it was very modern and cute. The hotel was in a great central location. It was colorful and just had a really good vibe. And there was a rooftop pool, which is always a plus in my book. Now, Barcelona is a beautiful town with the perfect mixture of beachy and culture, so you get that relaxation in with that rich cultural experience. If I had to give you 3 things to do in Barcelona, here would be my recommendations. Number 1 is to go to see the famous Sagrada Familia. It is still being built. No, it is not done, and we're hoping it's going to be done sometime in the next decade or so, but it is just absolutely jaw-dropping, and there is nothing like it that I have ever seen, so highly, highly recommend checking it out. EF does offer a Sagrada Familia tour excursion with sangria afterward, so you know that I signed up for that one. You absolutely have to. It was a phenomenal time, and I could not recommend it enough. Number 2 is taking a tour of the stunning mosaics at Park Güell. This is included in your EF Ultimate Break itinerary already. It is one of the iconic attractions that is embedded into the price. So definitely do not skip that tour with your group. Number 3 is a nightlife recommendation. Now listen, I love to go to a club and dance my butt off. So Shoko down by the water is one of my favorite places for a night out in Barcelona, and I can promise you, you will have a phenomenal time if you give it a go. Our next location and my personal favorite place on earth is Paris, France. Paris is, in my opinion, the most magical city in the entire world. During our stay in Paris, we stayed at the Joe and Joe Gentilly, which was a hostel. I really liked it. I've heard some mixed reviews from other people, but I personally really liked it. I thought it had a great social atmosphere. The food was really good and the rooms were super clean and comfortable. and the air was airing. And if you go to Europe in the summer, you know that sometimes there's none to be had, but there was definitely air at this hostel and I really liked it. Will say it was a little bit further out from the city center than I would have liked, but other than that, I have absolutely no complaints. As for things to do in Paris, because this is my favorite place in the entire world, it is really, really freaking hard for me to narrow it down to 3 things that you absolutely have to see. If you haven't been to Paris before, I highly recommend that you do some of the touristy things because they're essential. Number 1 is the Arc de Triomphe. It has a beautiful, stunning view from the top. Quite honestly, one of the most iconic views from the entire city. So highly recommend if you have some time to take a little walk up to the top. It's also just such an iconic landmark in the city. You can't miss it. Now let's talk about food because I think my favorite restaurant in the entire world is in Paris. And yes, it's a little bit more pricey. So maybe if you're wanting to splurge on a really good meal during the tour, this is the place to do it. It is called Monsieur Bleu. When I tell you the meal that I had there, I will think about it for the rest of my life. I got the spicy Mongolian beef with jasmine rice, and I'm telling you, it lives in my mind 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I am not joking. So for sure, if you're gonna splurge, definitely do it there. And they do have a terrace outside, so if the weather's really nice, you can sit out there and have a cutie little view of the Eiffel Tower. And number 3 is the Louvre Museum. Now, I am not a designated museum girly. That's not really my thing, but I do really think that you have to go to the Louvre at least once in your life. Seeing the Mona Lisa in person was really cool, but I'm gonna give you a little bit of a spoiler alert. It is so small. So if that's the only reason that you're going to go to the museum, you can absolutely skip it. But they have some jaw-dropping pieces in there that I can promise, even if you're not the artsy type, you're going to appreciate. Next stop on the tour was London, England, and that is another one of my favorite places in Europe. We stayed at the IBIS London Excel Docklands, and again, this is another one that's a little bit further out from the city, but you are right by the tube, aka the subway, the metro, whatever you want to call it. So it really wasn't a big deal, but this hotel was stunning, extremely clean, and the breakfast was probably my favorite breakfast of the entire trip. It was delicious. There were so many options. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Now for our London recommendations. First up, if you are someone that loves Harry Potter like myself, I have an obsession, but that's besides the point. I would definitely recommend paying a visit to the Warner Brothers studio tour. This is for sure something if you want to do, you need to buy tickets in advance because they will sell out incredibly quickly as the dates come closer. You absolutely cannot miss this attraction. You need to go. So another one of my favorite restaurants is actually in London, and it's called Circe's at the Gherkin. The Gherkin is that big skyscraper that kind of looks like an Easter egg, and it sits toward the top of that. The food was on a set menu the night that we went, and I want to say we paid 60 euros per person for a 5-star meal. It was absolutely unreal, mouth-watering, and the cocktails were phenomenal. So again, if you want more of a splurge and you're looking for a nicer, more upscale dinner, that is a great place to go. And 3, I really don't think you can miss the London Eye. I know it just looks like a Ferris wheel, but the views from the top are impeccable. And now we're headed to Amsterdam, Netherlands. While we were in Amsterdam, we stayed at the Klink Noord hostel, and I actually really liked it. They had a great bar area, they had pool tables, and it was in a pretty remote location, but the city center was quite literally like a 5-minute ferry ride, which was super neat and unique. And with that, here's some of my must-dos in Amsterdam. Number 1 is pretty obvious, and it is the Anne Frank House. Tickets to this attraction sell out incredibly fast, so you absolutely will need to purchase your tickets ahead of time. So if this is something that you're wanting to do, just make sure you plan in advance. Number 2 is get a really good lunch or dinner at De Cas. The food, phenomenal, and you just simply can't go wrong, and it's really cute. And 3 is the Heineken experience. I am not a super big beer drinker, but I always love going to a brewery tour. I feel like I learn so much and the whole process is just so interesting to me. So definitely recommend giving it a go. And if you are a beer drinker and you do enjoy Heineken, you get to taste some of their beer at the end. So that was pretty cool as well. Prague, Czech Republic was absolutely stunning. I loved the Gothic architecture. The food was great and the people were just super kind. During our time in Prague, we stayed at the Hotel Juno and this was a great hotel. The rooms were spacious. There were only 2 of us to a room, which was a really nice break from some of the hostels that we'd been in. The decor was super fun. Like the walls had some comics on them. It was just a really neat and unique place to stay. We did some really fun activities in Prague and the first was going to the pub. So the pub is this bar-like experience where you take friends and you'll all sit down around this table and they have these keg taps in the middle. So when you pour a beer from the kegs at the table, it keeps a count. And they have this leadership board at the front of the room from other pubs across Europe. And you get to compare and compete with different tables all over the place. So it was a really fun night out experience and definitely recommend if you're visiting with a big group. Number 2, when you're in Prague, I highly recommend going to a medieval dinner. It was such a unique and lively experience. The food was absolutely delicious, but they put on a show basically the entire time you're there, and it is so upbeat and just exciting. And number 3, they have an ice bar in Prague. So you go and you put these like sub-zero coats on and gloves and you get to drink from literal ice cups and everything in the room is made of ice. It was just super fun and a great place to go with a group of friends. So our next spot of the tour was Munich, Germany, and it was definitely one to remember. In Munich, we stayed at the Hotel am Neckarberg. This was a little bit further out from the city center again, but it was such a beautiful hotel. The staff was so nice, and it was in a beautiful little corner of town. Munich was by far one of my favorite cities in terms of activities. Number 1 was Dachau concentration camp. Now, I full-heartedly think that this is something everybody needs to experience at least once in their life. It was dark. It was extremely emotional and heartbreaking, but it's something that everybody needs to see and experience. Number 2 is the Hofbrauhaus, which is a traditional German eatery that was founded in Munich. Fun fact, they actually have a couple Hofbrauhaus locations in the United States as well, one being in Pittsburgh, my hometown. And if you can believe it, I went to the one in Munich before I ever went to the one in my hometown, and now it is a staple in my daily life. I highly recommend trying a Rattler. It is a mixture of beer and lemonade, and in the summer, it hits. Number 3 is the BMW Museum. I loved getting to learn about the history of cars. That could or could not be because my dad is a car dealer and has been for my whole life, but I just think it is so neat. And I love looking at the concept cars that they've come out with. They have some really high-tech, neat stuff there. So definitely recommend checking out if you have some additional free time. And now we're moving to quite literally the most beautiful place on earth, Lucerne, Switzerland. So we stayed a little bit outside of Lucerne in a small town called Engelberg, and honestly, I am so glad we did. Ended up staying in the ski lodge Engelberg, which was this cute, quaint little literal ski lodge where they had an amazing bar, a good restaurant, and the rooms were just amazing. They had this beautiful view of the mountains, and I could not pick a better place to stay. 3 recommendations for that area of Switzerland starts with Mount Titlis. EF Ultimate Break offers a Swiss Alps excursion, which is where we went to Mount Titlis. And when I tell you this is the one excursion I would recommend above any other one on this trip, it was my absolute favorite, and I'm going to tell you why. Not only did we take 3 gondolas to get 10,000 feet up in the Swiss Alps, but we also got to go snow tubing up there. They had other gondolas for views. They had a sky bridge, a glacier cave, a restaurant, shops. It was so amazing. Actually hilarious because down below it was, like 75 degrees and sunny. And then by the time you got all the way up to the top, it was a literal whiteout. It was just so neat to experience just the polar opposites in weather. Number 2 is another food recommendation, and I'm probably going to butcher this name, but I think it's called Rathas Brewery, and they serve authentic Swiss food. It was honestly such a beautiful day that we opted to sit outside on the terrace, and I'm so glad that we did. The sun was shining, the food was great, the water was glistening. It was just an all-around phenomenal time. So when the group took a trip into Lucerne, we had quite a bit of free time, and so me and a few friends opted to do a yacht tour. I want to say we booked it on Viator, but it was pretty cheap, and we got to cruise all around the water. It was stunning, doesn't even begin to cover how absolutely beautiful it was every single place that I turned. Next up is Venice, Italy, and I was so excited to see this place in person, and it truly is as beautiful as they say. Now in Venice, we stayed in my absolute favorite accommodation of this entire trip, and that was the Andot Hostel. There were so many things I loved about this hostel. They had an amazing social atmosphere. Their food was delicious. They had a stunning and beautiful courtyard out back, which was perfect for relaxing. And their air condition was freaking freezing. Again, as I noted before, air condition in Europe, seldom. So that was perfect. First recommendation for free time is to take a gondola ride. Now, I know people are gonna say that's so basic, but if you've never been to Venice before, you have to do it. I personally recommend going with a way smaller group of people. So I would say 2 to 3 people max if you really want space to move around and be able to take pictures. Otherwise, you're gonna kind of be stuck in like one seat the entire time, which still isn't bad, but if you want more space, definitely only book with a couple people. Number 2 is take a trip to go and look at St. Mark's Basilica. It is quite honestly one of the most beautiful churches in the entire world, and you can just look at it and you're in absolute awe. So if you're somebody that appreciates beautiful architecture and amazing sights, definitely take a trip over to look at it. Number 3, because we're in Italy, we obviously need a good gelato. So we're gonna go to Suso Gelato. It's renowned, it's phenomenal, and I could not recommend it enough. Moving right along to Florence, Italy, this was such a stunning portion of our journey. We stayed at the Hotel Leonardo da Vinci. It's probably my least favorite hotel of the entire tour. I'm not even sure if they use the accommodation anymore. I want to say my experience with it was so bad because the day that we got in, their air system broke. So it was like 90 degrees in our rooms and they couldn't get it fixed throughout the duration of our trip. Definitely a bummer. So we had to sleep with our windows open, which wouldn't have been the biggest deal, but there were some mosquitoes that were coming in our window and biting us. So I was like, I'll deal with the heat. Here's a list of 3 things I absolutely recommend doing while you're in Florence. Number 1 is a vineyard tour. Our tour guide orchestrated an optional excursion where we could go and visit a family vineyard. There was a meal, you got to walk through the vineyard, you got to try different wines. I loved it, and if I had to pick one thing in Florence that I would do over and over again when I went back, it would be that. Number 2 is if you are looking for a phenomenal pasta dinner, and you're gonna find that at Osteria Santo Spirito. They have the most lush gnocchi I have ever had. It's like baked and broiled on top, just mouth-watering, so good. And number 3, as I'm sure you can probably guess, it is a day trip to Cinque Terre. Stunning landscapes, beautiful crystal blue swimmable water, and amazing food and shops. And now for Rome, Italy. We stayed at the Albany Hotel Roma. It was a little bit more retro, but I honestly really liked it. Rooms were spacious and they were clean and they had a cutie little bar. My room recommendations are definitely fun. Let's get into them. Number 1 is the Colosseum. You cannot go to Rome without taking a Colosseum tour. I feel like that speaks for itself. And when you're looking at it, you just can't even believe that something as beautiful as that was ever created. Number 2 is a hotspot for Americans in Rome, and that is the Steelers Bar, aka La Botticella of Pogi Giovanni. This is a super quaint bar, but it has such a lively atmosphere, and you can find Americans from all over the United States sitting there relaxing and drinking some beers, but it is a great place to go and mingle and make friends. Number 3 is Vatican City. If you're in the area, you absolutely have to visit. And if you're somebody that likes to check countries off of your list, that counts. Now we are on to the final country of the tour, Greece, starting in Athens. We stayed at the Stratos Vasilikos Hotel. It was gorgeous, clean, great location, comfortable beds, good food, all of the above, 5 out of 5 stars. I really loved all of the activities that I did in Greece, so here we go. Number 1, if you haven't been before, you do have to go and do the Acropolis tour. It's another one of those things that you look at in person and you're like, how in the world does this exist? And how has it been in existence for this long? It's stunning, gorgeous, and the view from the top, unreal. Number 2 is the Domani Cinema. It is an outdoor drive-in-like cinema in this cute little courtyard, but it was such a fun way to spend a sunset evening. Fully stocked snack bar. They have a regular bar where you can get cocktails or mocktails or anything in between, and it was just such a fun, unique night. Number 3 is a food recommendation, and it's called Fairy Tale Athens. It's a super Instagrammable restaurant, but the food was honestly delicious. And the cocktails are so over the top, it's unreal. Decor in this place, it reminds me of kind of like a fun house, but an upscale fun house. There's balloons and pink and glitter, and it's otherworldly, and you just have to check it out. And the very last stop of the tour, Paros, Greece. We stayed at Hotel Narges, and this place gets a 5 out of 5 in my book. Rather 1,000 out of 5, 1,000 out of 10, whatever you want to call it. It was immaculate. Freaking beautiful, like stunning, gorgeous. They have a great pool. The rooms are spacious. The air was phenomenal, and it is in a great part of town. In Paros, I recommend taking a boat cruise. So our tour director set up an optional excursion for our group, and we all opted to go. And honestly, it was probably my favorite day of tour. We just had such a blast swimming. They made us a barbecue. We got to dance on the boat. All around, great vibes. Number 2, if you're looking for good seafood, you're gonna go to Xenos. Fresh fish right on the water, amazing, amazing views, and honestly, just great vibes. Number 3 is Krios Beach Bar. If you're looking for a fun afternoon in the water with a little sprinkle of relaxation, this is the perfect place to be. Now we're done with the country recaps, but we're not done with the video because I asked you guys to submit some burning questions to my Instagram, and I'm gonna go ahead and answer them. First question is essential or plus. So that's a phenomenal question, but I really think it depends on you. When I went on the trip, the only option was essential. And at that point in time, it was called standard. And I believe we had up to 6 people to a room. I personally really liked it because I went on that trip solo. So I thought it was a really great way to make friends. But as I get older, I find that I like to have my own space. So if I took the trip at this point in time in my life, now being 29, I think I would take the plus option just to have, you know, my own room with only one other person. But other than that, I really think it depends on your preferences. Number 2, what was your favorite location and why? So my favorite location is probably pretty obvious, and it is Paris, France. But the reason why is because I spent a greater part of my life studying French. I did it in middle school, high school, and college. So I learned a lot about the language, the culture, and everything in between. And so for the longest time, I had wanted to be able to go there. But full transparency, as a kid, I didn't have disposable income to be able to travel in that regard. So I never thought I would get to a point in my life where I would be able to afford something like this. So it was really special to me when I was able to find EF Ultimate Break and be able to afford this trip and finally get to the place that I have wanted to go my entire life. Now, after this trip, I have been back to Paris multiple times. It is somewhere I will go forever, but it just holds such a special place in my heart. Number 3, if I can only do 2 of the optional excursions throughout the entire trip, which should I do? That is such a hard question. Okay, I got it. Number one, without a doubt, is the Swiss Alps excursion. It was my favorite thing. I think we did that entire tour. So 10 out of 10 would recommend. I went into further details about it during our country recaps, but I will just say I had so much freaking fun. I don't think I've ever laughed that much in my life. Definitely recommend the Swiss Alps excursion. Second, I think would be our tour director set up an optional for a bar crawl in London, and that was one of my favorite nights out on tour. We all went as a group. We had so much fun. We danced, we laughed, and we kind of got to know each other a little bit more because it was closer toward the beginning of the trip. So definitely recommend checking that out if it's available on your tour. Number 4, did you feel like the trip was too long or was it just the right amount? This might be a little bit of an unpopular opinion here, but honestly, I was so ready to keep going. I know 35 days is a long time to be away from home, but for me, I really discovered that travel was my passion on that trip. And so I just wanted more and more and more. And for me, I could have probably hopped around for the remainder of the summer at that point. But I do know that that is an astronomically long time for a lot of people to be away. But I think it's a really great length, especially for all of the places you get to see. If you're looking to check a bunch of bucket list places off, then definitely this trip is for you. Number 5 is all the cons. Honestly, I don't have anything bad to say about this trip. This trip changed my entire life, and I don't say that lightly. I loved every aspect of it. I lost myself and found myself at the same time, and I think before I went on this trip, I was so lost. I had no idea who I was anymore, what I liked, what I disliked. I had just lost so much about myself, and I rediscovered everything on this tour, and so I think it was so transformative for me that I don't have any bad experiences. But I will reiterate again, it is a long time to be away from home, so that could be a con for some people that get homesick really easily. Another thing I will say is when you're traveling that frequently and for that duration of time, it's easy to get sick. So you probably will get sick on your tour, and that can be kind of a bummer and a con, especially when you're around so many people and your germs are just, all over the place. It's bound to happen. So just making sure you're prepared so you're not bedridden and miserable. Number 6 was, what camera did you bring? I obviously had my phone, and at that time I really wasn't into content creation too much or even photography, but I did bring my DSLR, although it is a very chunky camera. I typically opted to just use my phone, but I think now I would take my DSLR with me and utilize that. If I had a Canon G7X Mark II, that's what I would take with me at this point because I feel like I do more vlog style now. Haven't purchased it yet, have plans to purchase it prior to the end of this year. So that's probably what I will be taking with me from here on out. If you do have it, phenomenal. If you don't, that's also okay. I will say I love taking pictures on my iPhone because I can post them immediately. Number 7, can you give us your travel essentials for this trip? Absolutely, that's my specialty. You need 2 things right off the bat, a travel adapter and a travel converter. The adapter is going to allow you to charge things like your laptop, your phone, your camera in those global outlets. And then a converter is if you're somebody that uses hot tools for your hair, things of that nature, so that you don't short out your products because voltage is different across the globe. The third item you're going to want to have is a good pair of walking shoes. I am not kidding you when I tell you I walked 15,000 to 20,000 steps every single day. I took a pair of white Adidas NMDs, and you can dress them up or down, but they were just great to throw on for when I knew I was going to be on my feet constantly. One thing you do not want to do is give yourself blisters or be uncomfortable when you are out for those long days. It's just, you don't want it. Number 4 is a microfiber towel. So on this trip, you're in a lot of different climates. I would say it can be cooler in places like Paris and London, and then really, really hot and warm where you're going to want to be in the water in like Italy and Greece. So having a microfiber towel on you when you want to do those like water or beach-based activities is 10 out of 10 a great idea. Sometimes the hotels won't have towels for you to take with you, so it's just great to have on hand. Number 5 is a portable charger. I am not exaggerating. These days are super, super long, and the last thing that you want is for your phone to die so you can't take pictures, look up directions, reviews, chat to people in the event of an emergency. You just want to make sure your phone is charged at all times, so definitely bring one of those with you. I have quite the extensive list, but I'm only going to give you one more for now. If you don't have luggage locks, on your suitcase, definitely buy them. When you're staying in hostels and you're in and out of rooms with different people, it's just a safety precaution. Not that anybody's going to take your stuff, but I personally would rather be safe than sorry. I have such an extensive list of my travel must-haves on my Amazon storefront. I will link that in the description box. So if you want to go to my exhaustive list, it is in there. 8, I think, packing tips. They always say pack light, pack light, pack light. I am a pack what you want type of girl. So on my trip, for instance, I took a checked bag, a rolling carry-on, and a backpack. And honestly, quite a lot of our other travelers did too. A lot of people get stressed out that you're going to have to carry your luggage with you everywhere. That's not the case at all. Most of the time when we're traveling by motor coach, you're dropped off right in front of your hotel and picked up right in front of there. So you're not going to be pulling your luggage around. Same thing with when we go to the airport, when we go to the train station, the ferry, everything like that. You are always brought your bags, and sure, you'll have to take them up to your room more times than not, but you're not dragging them behind you through the cities ever. I would definitely say pack a lot of layers. Like I said, it can be colder in places like London and Paris, even in the summertime compared to somewhere like Italy or Greece or even Barcelona. I will say I am super, super glad that I packed a ton of medicine. I probably looked crazy and like a walking pharmacy, but honestly, I had vitamins, nausea medication, allergy medication, eye drops, headache medicine. You never know. And honestly, I would rather have what I need to take care of certain symptoms in my hotel room rather than running to a pharmacy or here or there trying to get some relief. I took so much, but to be honest with you, like I said, when you're traveling with that many people, it's super easy to get sick. And I ended up using a ton of it while I was gone. Just hack, definitely take medicine. Do yourself a favor and leave the heels at home. I know how tempting it is to want to put it on with a cute outfit, but to be honest with you, you won't wear them. And even if you do put them on with the cobblestone streets and uneven sidewalks, you are going to twist your ankle and you're going to be really upset because that's going to keep you from doing the things that you really want to do while you're there. Another thing is make sure you're packing what you're comfortable in, right? So I love jumpsuits, flowy dresses, 2-piece sets. I'm not so much a person that's ever going to put on jeans, or I don't wear jean shorts a lot. So I would rather pack things that I know I'm going to be comfortable in. I know I'm going to actually wear, and not those, I don't know, I could get a cute picture in it. Just pack things that you're actually going to wear in your day-to-day. It's going to save you A, so much space, and B, so much time when you're trying to figure out what you're going to put on. Question number 9 is, I'm going solo. Any tips? Of course I have tips for you. This was my first EF Ultimate Break trip and I went solo. And when I tell you I'm an extreme extrovert and I was still terrified. The night before, I remember saying to my mom, like, I can't go. Like, I'm not going. I am so freaking anxious and nervous. But when I tell you, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I made lifelong friends that I still, years later, speak to on a regular basis and travel with all the time. The most incredible memories that are ingrained in my brain forever. And they're some of the most fond memories I have of my life thus far. It was just such a transformative experience for me. And it truly changed my life. I know I've said that so many times, but I can't accurately describe just how much good this trip did. My heart, my soul. I learned so much, not only about myself, but the world around me. And so I would say, put yourself out there, step outside your comfort zone. You're going to make friends. You're going to have a phenomenal time, and just really lean into the experience, because this is something that so many people in the world will never get to experience, but you will. And that is so cool. That's all for your questions. Thank you so much for submitting those. I had an absolute blast recounting my favorite EF Ultimate Break trip thus far with you all. Again, it holds such a special place in my heart, and I could talk about it for days. So I know I answered all of those questions, but if you have any more questions, just leave them in the comments down below. I will be happy to answer them for you. And again, to reiterate, if you are looking to go on your first EF Ultimate Break Tour, be sure to book through the link in the description box. That will give you an additional $100 off of your first trip. It's going to activate my promo code UAJustMannering100, and you will just have the trip of a lifetime. I can guarantee that. Be sure to like this video and subscribe, and let me know what trip you want me to review next. Thanks for watching, y'all. Bye!